Welcome to the Product Leaders Edge podcast.
Welcome back to the Product Leaders Edge podcast. I'm your host, KJ Green. I'm a product leader, entrepreneur, and lover of all things technology. This is episode 8, titled The Core for Designing Modern Technology. Well, this is a solo episode. Thank you so much for your engagement for the past 7 episodes. It's crazy to say that we are actually at an inflection point of the season because we've had such great episodes thus far. Our first episode with me solo, and then our episode with Kyle and Travell Williams, Kyle Sino and Travell Williams, who are both corporate product managers. They helped to set the stage on what product management is. And then we had my solo episodes on what is product market fit. And honestly, I laid it out for you guys. It was a classroom style episode. And then we had our episode with Miriam on go-to-market strategy in the age of AI. And that episode honestly was one of my was my favorite episode throughout the entire season. And then we had our last episode with Andre Ray, who talked about science, the intersection of science, AI, and technology. Really great episode. If you haven't listened to those episodes, please feel free to jump back after this episode to tune in. Okay. So getting started here, we're at the mid-season of the Product Leaders Edge podcast, and I just want to continue to enforce the thesis of the Product Leaders Edge podcast. So product leadership is a unitary discipline that exists across industries, systems, and technology. And the idea has been reinforced in every conversation that we've had thus far in the season, from the founders that we've brought in to the product leaders and operators. And today, I want to explore how that thesis is showing up in my own journey. So just thinking through how season 1 has gone thus far, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Leave a review. Let me know how you thought season 1 has gone so far. Honestly, for me, what surprised me the most is just the engagement. I didn't expect anyone to listen to this podcast but myself and maybe some family members. But you guys have been super engaged throughout this entire season, and I really, really appreciate it. And I could say today we are currently at almost 300 downloads across 14 to 16 countries. I don't over obsess over metrics, but I do think they're important because it shows that product leadership is a borderless topic. This is a global topic that everyone can relate to across countries, across nationalities, across cultures, across ethnic groups. So I'm looking forward to the continued excitement and the continued engagement throughout this season. And it also proves the point that product leadership transcends titles and industries, because product leadership, as I said, shows up everywhere. And if you're building a business, you have to start with people and what those people want to buy, what they want to purchase, and what you want to design in order to be an effective business organization in the marketplace. It all starts with people, and that's what product leadership is. And that's why I see product leadership as bigger than just a product management job, because a product management job is just a function in a company that's defined and scoped based off of what that company needs out of the product manager. But product leadership is the broader scope on how we design systems, platforms, experiences, and companies to meet the needs of customers, clients, etc. Okay, I'm looking at my laptop battery here. If you guys can give me 1 second, I actually need to go grab my laptop charger because I started and I actually didn't plug up. And I would hate for this computer to die on us. And honestly, I was thinking about it as I saw the battery going down, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll cut this part out. And I thought to myself, no, because this is product leadership in real life, right? designing for the experience. Sometimes we forget things, sometimes we don't. But anyway, let me go grab my charger and I'll be right back. Give me 5 seconds. Okay, friends, we are all plugged up. Thank you for bearing with me with that. And as I was walking to my other desk station, I was thinking, like, yes, we're talking about product leadership as a function, what product leadership means. But honestly, if I'm being for real with you all, when I think about podcasting in general, this is something that I really had to grow into because I'm talking to a camera right now. And, you kind of have to imagine that you're talking to an audience. And that's not easy for a lot of people. And it certainly wasn't easy for me. I started my podcasting journey really warming up myself through short form content on Tech Tuesdays with KJ. It's on LinkedIn. That's my other platform. It's really, this podcast is an extension of Tech Tuesdays with KJ, but I did that for an entire year before I even started podcasting. And the thing that I had to give up was perfection, because perfection and comparison is the killer of all joy. And I couldn't compare myself to people, the Joe Rogans of the world, Candace Owens, despite of how you feel about her, and other really well-renowned podcasters. I couldn't compare myself to them. But what I could compare is the consistency, because these people are very consistent. They show up every day. They record. They put out great content. They put out great work. And we all enjoy and benefit from what they do. So consistency has been a big, I would say, strength for me in podcasting. Second, just being comfortable in my own voice, being comfortable on camera, being comfortable sharing clips where, like, I don't know, we can always criticize ourselves on the way that we look, just anything. And honestly, I just think there is something to be said about feedback, and there is something to be said about, I guess, implementing that feedback. But at some point, you just have to hit play and record and be fine with and clean up and just grow alongside of the process. And I've continued to grow alongside of this process, and I truly enjoy podcasting. This is more than just, as I've said, yes, this podcast is really the front door to my company, Solo Star. But honestly, I enjoy podcasting just in general. I enjoy having these conversations with you all. I enjoy learning about the guests and just bringing light to founders and operators who may not always get the shine, because I think a lot of podcasts these days focus on the success story, but they don't often focus on the builder story. And that's what we're here for. That's what the Product Leaders Edge is here for. So that was just a quick reflection. That was really off script, but honestly, I just had to say that because I've really enjoyed podcasting thus far. And in my interlude episode that comes right after this, I really begin to lay out what my goals are with the Product Leaders Edge podcast. And I don't want to spoil it, but one of my goals is to be in the podcasting game for the next 10 years. So hold me accountable in 2036, okay? Because podcasting is changing. I think there's so many different formats that you can experiment with, and it's only gonna grow to a bigger industry than what it already is. And it's crazy to even say that podcasting is an industry, because I remember when podcasts really started in like the mid 2000s, 20, don't quote me, but like 2008 is when era, then the early 2010s. That's really when podcasting really started to come up. And honestly, I think at that point, podcasting was in its infancy, and folks like Joe Rogan were just having conversations, and look where he is today. So there's room for everyone in the podcasting world, and there's room to grow in podcasting, because honestly, I've grown so much in this space, and I'm excited. I'm excited for what's to come. Anyway, so in my opinion, season one has gone great thus far, and we're only at 1/3 of season one. Technically halfway. We're a third of the way. We're not done with season one. We have so this is episode 8, and then we have like 2 interlude episodes. So that's 2, and we have about 7 to 9 episodes left. So we still got some ways to go. Still got some ways to go. Anyway, one of the reflections that I wanted to bring forward to you all today is back in March, I did a Spartan race at Citi Field. The Mets, the the baseball New York Mets team in Queens, New York. The Mets Stadium is located in Queens, New York. Queens is a borough of New York City. And the Spartan race was there. That Spartan race is called the Spartan Stadion race. It's a 5K with about 20 obstacles. And honestly, I would say doing the race at the stadium itself is an obstacle because you have to run up stadium stairs, run down the stairs of the stadium, run across the stadium. It's an obstacle in itself. And honestly, that was a really fun experience. It was a phenomenal experience. I had a great time. I trained for that race from the end of Thanksgiving to early March. So about 4 to 5 months. I'll let you do the math. But I lost a lot of weight training for that race, and I'm not going to give numbers, but it was well worth it. And I did the Spartan race as a way to reset my fitness. I recently graduated from grad school about 2 years ago. When I graduated out of grad school, I was honestly at my worst weight. Again, I'm not going to give numbers. I was at my worst weight possible. And I really wanted, after graduating, to reset my fitness habits, just to reset my life, to get back to the weight that I was at before grad school, before COVID. I had gained some weight during the COVID era too. And then that rolled into grad school. Anyway, so I really wanted to use this time to do that. And I did. I worked out immensely throughout late 2024. 2025 was my best year. And in November of 2025 is when I decided to do the Spartan race because my cousin, Andrea Fret Ellis, I hope I'm saying her full name correctly. Major shout out to her. She is a mom of 2 and she is probably one of the best hybrid athletes that I know. She is so fit. She has an at-home gym. She runs almost every day. She has done plenty of races, including the Spartan race, and she is looking to do the HYROX race in October. Shout outs to her, but that's how I got interested in the race because she encouraged me to do it because she did it and crushed it. So major shout out to her as a mom of 2. Gosh, she inspires me every day to become more fit. And because of her is why I did that race. So I really owe that to her. But anyway, the lessons learned there is really what I learned in podcasting is immense consistency. I was training my butt off 5 days a week, 5 days a week in the gym, including recovery, and also making sure that my diet matched the output. And I didn't use any fitness trackers at the time. I do now because I'm in this hybrid athlete game for real now. So I do have a Garmin watch that I recently just purchased. This is not an ad. That's why I didn't show it. But consistency was necessary because I just needed space and time to really work on the craft and really get my body in the right state to really take on that race. And I crushed it. I crushed it. I had a really strong finishing time, and I had a really good time. That adrenaline was just amazing. But again, preparation, consistency, and resilience were really a lot of the biggest wins throughout the Spartan race. And I would encourage anyone to do a Spartan race. They are entry level for the Spartan 5Ks and the Spartan Stadion races at the stadiums, really entry level. Anyone can do them. And it's really a good way to just push your body to limits that it hasn't gone before, because I did do that. And it took me 2 weeks to recover. And now I am preparing for the HYROX race, which is another really great hybrid athlete race. And that will be in 2027. But I'm really just conditioning my body now for it. And I'll really hunker down on preparation in January, February of next year, because the race will be June 2027. But yeah, that's what I've been up to. Also, a second thing is Oh my gosh. I am currently studying for the Amazon Web Services Solutions Architect Associate certification. This certification really is a test of faith for me, but also this certification is really a top level certification in the AI and cloud space. And I've always said this to you all, if you really want to understand AI beyond just prompt engineering, you really have to understand the cloud. The cloud is what makes AI work. If there was no storage to store AI data, if there was no compute, what I mean by compute is servers to power AI. If there was no networking, if there was no security, AI would not be working. It would just be a prototype. And that's why I wanted to pursue. This is why I'm pursuing this certification, because I'm taking my technical skills to the next level. And that's really because I see a lot of opportunity here on the corporate side and entrepreneurially in a really big way to build in the cloud and AI space. And that's why I'm pursuing the certification. And it's difficult. And full transparency, I took my first exam for this certification. I did not pass. I was so close. I was a very, very close margin, but I didn't pass. And it's okay because I respect the work and I respect what's needed to build modern systems in this current age because it's not easy. We're not playing with toys here. We're playing with enterprise systems that cost millions and in some cases billions of dollars. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know what you're doing. And I'm going to retake it again. And I'm currently studying at this current moment. But I brought that up because I wanted to be fully transparent on where I was with that. I think I mentioned that in the first episode or one of the interlude episodes. Either way, I still wanted to be transparent on what's going on there. But the reasons why I'm pursuing this is, again, to expand my technical depth as a product leader and to understand the infrastructure layer be under modern products as well as AI, and to build stronger conversations with engineers and solutions architects. And product leaders, honestly, these days, because of AI and how AI has lowered the barrier, AI has just made collapse a lot of roles into one and really has broke the barriers that product managers, product leaders, and engineers used to have to where product leaders can't exist in the user layer anymore. I know previous years in the 2010s, the product leader was the growth expert. How do we get more users? How do we add features? How do we create better UI? But product leadership does not exist. For some companies, it still does, but to be competitive in product leadership, it exists at the infrastructure layer. And AI and cloud are forcing product leaders to climb further down the stack. And this is why technical proficiency matters even more for folks who aren't engineers. And this is why I'm doing this certification. This is why I'm putting myself through this work to take on this certification, because it's not easy. Friends, it's not easy. But I'm willing to put in the work. I have a great retake system, and I'm gonna put it to the test. And honestly, trusting God in the process, because that's all we can do. Anyway, so I just talked a bit about the cloud stack, and that's really the core of the episode today, talking about the core four and how we design modern technology in today's era. And I want to quickly highlight, because early in my career, I thought expertise meant going deeper. But in many ways, I see that like expertise is really specializing and having depth in a particular area. And over time, I've learned that leadership often requires something different. It requires perspective, understanding how systems connect, and how technologies connect to businesses, how customers connect to outcomes, how outcomes connect to strategy, and how all of that ultimately connects back to people. And the higher that you move in an organization, the less your job becomes about a single function, and the more it becomes about the enterprise-wide impact that you can provide. And this is why I want to bring forward just the core four of designing modern technology. And I want to start with cloud, because honestly, I believe cloud has become one of the most important literacy skills in modern technology. Honestly, the entire world runs on the cloud. And we saw this when AWS had an outage a few months ago. Cloud is really the backbone of the modern day technology, like how the railroads were back in times past. So let's pull this up. So I believe, like I said, cloud has become one of the most important literacy skills in modern technology. But this isn't to say that everyone needs to become an engineer or a cloud engineer, but cloud serves as the foundation that modern technology runs on. And when I think about the cloud, the core four of cloud, what I was saying earlier, it's compute, storage, networking, and security. So compute is where the application runs. So the server that powers the application. Storage is where the information lives. Where are we storing the data? Are we using an S3 bucket or a GCP Azure equivalent to store the data? Networking is how systems communicate. And then security is what protects everything. Honestly, security is the moat here because, in my opinion, I see a lot of product leaders and just individuals not having a grasp and understanding of security. We often think, oh, well, that's for the SOC analyst or the cybersecurity professional to worry about. Not in this current time, especially with AI and how AI is really powering the backs, putting a battery in the backs of a lot of hackers and deep fakes. Like, we need to have baseline proficiency on security as well. And thinking about something as simple as Netflix, we can think about compute running the actual Netflix application, the server, storage, which holds the videos and the metadata, networking as the liaison and the link that delivers the video content to your device, and security ensuring that only authorized users can access the service or your account. And these four building blocks appear everywhere, whether you are using Netflix, Amazon, Spotify, Datadog, OpenAI, it shows up everywhere. Understanding these concepts helps understand why systems scale and why they and not only how systems scale, but how they fail, why they're secure, why they're so expensive. Modern technology is not cheap, it's expensive. AI tokens, cloud credits. People often talk about, hey, you could get an AI agent to check your email and give you an update. That's great, but somebody is paying for that. That's not free. It's not free. It's not the early 2000s where we use platforms like LimeWire that were free. Anyway, cloud is not only an engineering topic, it is a core product leadership topic. It's a business topic, and it's increasingly a leadership topic. Okay, so let's talk about the product core. And this is my favorite. Every product leader I've admired is strong in these four areas. Customer understanding. We talked about this in episodes 4 and 5 with customer discovery, product strategy, delivery and execution, and business outcomes. Every feature, every platform needs to have an ROI that ties back to business outcomes. If it doesn't, then the conversation has to become, how are we able to generate ROI from this platform feature or feature? How are we able to generate ROI? Because we're no longer in the 2010s where we were building apps and features just to build them to really show off, if you will, the cool tech. We are in the 2020s where the stakes are higher. We're dealing with real world systems that have to drive real world impact. And, the questions that we need to ask, especially in regards to customer understanding, is, who are we serving? What customer problems actually matter, and what is just noise? Because there's a lot of noise, when you go in the comments, there's a lot of noise. But what are those reoccurring problems that, as a product leader, you have to pay attention to? What jobs are customers trying to accomplish? The jobs to be the famous jobs to be done framework. What job is this to accomplish? What is the job of Dunkin' Donuts? What is the job of your iPhone? That's not an ad, but what's the job? What is the job of products that we are using? For me, the job of my iPad is to help me track notes. The job of Riverside FM is to help me record this episode. The job of YouTube for me is to help with discoverability of the Product Leaders Edge podcast. And that's where I house a lot of clips. What is the job of LinkedIn? To help us to get a job, to showcase our professional skills on a platform where the entire world is you. Well, I won't say entire world, but that majority of your professional network is using. What's the job? That's the real question that we have to ask of these products because they are performing a job. We are not purchasing items because we want to collect them on the shelf, which retail therapy is real. But I purchased my Garmin watch because I needed better tracking systems in my workouts. I needed to understand and not guesstimate the calories that I was burning when I would do a strength workout where there's no treadmill counter, like there's no calorie counter anywhere. That's why I purchased my Garmin watch because I was guesstimating or screenshotting the workouts to ChatGPT and asking ChatGPT, hey, how much do you think I did in this workout? Which who's to say, right? But now I'm better able to track that because I have my Garmin watch and it's performing the job well. Again, this is not an ad. This is just real life. Okay, so what are the jobs to be done? And please look up the jobs to be done framework. Type in Google, ask ChatGPT what that is, just so you can get an understanding. And I also talked about the jobs to be done framework in episode 5. So please jump back to that episode if you need a better understanding on the jobs to be done framework. Okay, also designing for customers and users does require a high level of empathy and curiosity. You need to be curious to what your customers are going to use your product for, but you also need to have a lot of empathy when the product doesn't live up to the standard of the customer. And working in the hospitality industry, working at companies like Amazon and Enterprise Rent-A-Car, I have learned customer obsession to the highest degree because those companies are truly customer obsessed. And to be customer obsessed is to have empathy. When someone complains, yes, it may be noise, but really, what is the underlying issue behind of that complaint? Also, how are you designing the user experience in a way that works well for your customers? Are you conducting usability studies with a sample group of customers to make sure that the platform delivers on the user experience that they expect from your platform before you launch it to the world? Are you willing to redesign a feature or your login screen based off of user feedback? That's really having empathy at the end of the day. The best product leaders spend time observing customers, listening to frustrations. Again, there's a lot of noise in the comments. There's noise everywhere. But as a product leader, you have to be able to narrow down the noise and prioritize. Prioritization is really one of the strongest skills in the work of a product leader. And I talked about that in episode 2 with Kyle Sino. So if you need to learn more about how to prioritize as a product leader, jump back to that episode. Also, identifying patterns that aren't always obvious in a dashboard or surveys. And I was really kind of boggled about this the other day because I wondered, like, how did product leaders or the equivalent handle surveys and dashboards back in the 90s and early 2000s? And honestly, they didn't, because a lot of the technologies and the surveys and the dashboards that we use today did not exist then. And a lot of the metrics were simple. Did we make money? Did we hit our target? If not, somebody's on the line, right? But now we have so much data at our fingertips that tells us so many different aspects of a product and a customer journey, customer experience, how the server is performing, NPS scores, all the things. But what actually matters for the current metric that we're trying to move? And how does that tie back to the overall KPIs of the product and the organization. And that's the real questions that we have to answer in today's time because we have all of the information at our fingertips. It's really parsing through the data and aligning that with the goals that were originally set for the product success metrics. Whew, this is a mouthful. Product strategy answers where we are going, what we are prioritizing, and what we are choosing to do. So, strategy is about making deliberate choices based off of the strategy, right? And delivery and execution, that answers the question, how do we turn ideas into reality? How do we align teams? How do we ship products effectively? So, I think business outcomes and product strategy answers the bigger question on revenue growth, customer retention, operational efficiency, market expansion, and outcomes that help determine whether a product is creating meaningful value, honestly. Because if it's not, then it needs to be scrapped or revisited. So if we think about just like a fitness application, right? The customer's understanding might reveal that people struggle with consistency, right? Because fitness is really a game of consistency, honestly. Showing up to the gym every day, day in, day out. But then we think about the product strategy. You think about a product strategy that will determine whether you focus on accountability, having a coaching mechanism, or habit formation. And then the execution would bring those ideas to life. And then business outcome tells you whether customer retention improved or whether the customer found value. And business outcomes honestly changes depending on what stage or life cycle you are within the product. There's times where maybe at the early stage of product development, it's really about user retention, user growth. Later stages may be more on profitability metrics. So it really determines on what stage you are in the product, honestly. And I would say that product leaders have to be adaptable. And I know everyone says you need to be adaptable, right? But that's true. But being adaptable to being able to shift gears based off of a new industry trend or getting to a certain milestone in your product where, okay, we've acquired the users, the number of users, a high number of users within our addressable market. So what's the next metric that we want to tackle? Whether it be retention of those users that were acquired, profitability, revenue, whatever. But the metrics have to shift as the product grows and matures. And honestly, within the core four for product leadership, I think everything reinforces each other. So the customer understanding reinforces the product strategy. The product strategy reinforces delivery and execution. Delivery and execution reinforces business outcomes. And again, I would put the customer in the center because that's who you're building for. Okay, so let's talk about AI because AI does have its own unique core four as well. And as AI has become increasingly more important, it does require its own core four. And if I had to lay out a core four for AI, honestly, it's models, GPT, LLMs, data, infrastructure, and applications. So models are the intelligence. They are what people think about when they hear AI. So when you hear AI, what do you think about? We all think about ChatGPT first, right? Because ChatGPT is really who opened the floodgates on AI. AI existed before. We had AI through Siri, Alexa, GPS. AI has been here for a very, very long time, but ChatGPT opened the floodgates. So GPT, we think about Claude, we think about Gemini, Llama, but models are only one layer, and then the data is the fuel. We often hear that term garbage in, garbage out, which is true, but without quality data, even the most advanced models struggle. They hallucinate, they load very slowly because AI cannot work on its own. It needs to be fed quality data. And infrastructure, and this goes back to what I said earlier, because infrastructure is a core element, and this goes back to the cloud. The infrastructure includes the core four of the cloud. See where we're going? AI at the top, cloud at the bottom, because cloud is what fuels AI. The compute, networking, and storage is required to allow AI to work at scale. Applications are where users interact with AI. Applications are where the business outcomes occur. Applications are where technology becomes useful. And one of the reasons why I think the AI conversations sometimes become distorted is because we spend so much time discussing models. We spend a lot of time talking about the application layer, but businesses don't buy models, they buy outcomes. Again, businesses are buying AI to do a job, productivity, automation, a job, not just fancy tech. And outcomes happen when all of the core four layers work together. So AI is simply not a technology discipline. It's increasingly becoming a systems discipline, as well as we could say the same about cloud, and we could say the same about product leadership. Okay, so we touched on the core four. I wanted to really just talk about where we see security and data showing up here, because these are two very important topics. Security and data historically are viewed as specialist domains. We often say, hey, well, security is for cybersecurity teams, data is for data engineers, but with AI, all of that has blended because AI depends on data, cloud depends on security, products depend on trust, organizations depend on governance, and every builder needs at least a foundational understanding of security and data. And I want to ask, have you guys seen Smart House? That movie it was a Disney original movie. It came out in the early 2000s. And one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up is because I rewatched this movie recently, and honestly, seeing Smart House watching it in the 2020s compared to my view as a kid in the early 2000s is night and day. Because growing up, we couldn't have imagined this type of technology, but now in the 2020s, we're actually living it. So it's crazy. It's crazy to watch it now. But one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up Smart House is because many of us remember. So Pat was the operating system of the Smart House. She did everything. She helped with chores. She helped with just home organization. She was really the Google Home before Google Home existed. Pat was the AI before AI. And what's interesting is that story wasn't about intelligence. It was more about access. Pat had access to everything. She had access to schedules, security systems, communications, daily operations. And when her objectives changed, i.e., the main character of the movie, Ben, when he configured her settings to make Pat more motherly, the permissions became a problem because Pat took it to a whole nother level and started locking doors, started barking commands and telling them, hey, like, I said this, so you have to do it because I run this house. And I'm like, Pat, girl, who gave you all of these permissions? If you haven't seen Smart House, please, Disney Plus, it's on Disney Plus. Please go watch Smart House. Please go watch Smart House. Because seeing it from the lens of today's era, it will blow your mind like it did mine. But in cloud computing, providers like AWS call this the principle of least privilege. So every system needs to just be given the least amount of access. So systems should only have access to what they need and nothing more. And I would argue that that's not just a security discipline. It also should be interwoven within AI ethics. And I know within AI ethics, we often talk about governance, we talk about usage, but security increasingly should be in the conversation of AI ethics. And yeah, like I said, we talk about bias, transparency, fairness, but we should be talking about security in the AI ethics conversation. Because intelligence without governance can quickly become a problem, like we saw in that movie. Anyway, so on the topic of core four, I wanted to talk about my personal core four because behind every great career is a person, a human being who is navigating life in the best way that they know how. And for me, it's really through faith, health, career, relationships, community. Well, Faith, health, career, relationships, and community. That's my core four, honestly. Relationships and community is really at the center of this. And for me, faith provides direction. Health provides energy. I take my fitness seriously. I work out 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week. Career provides purpose, growth, and stewardship, and it helps pays the bills. Let's be honest. And what's interesting here is that these pillars don't operate independently. They reinforce each other. And I've seen this firsthand because grad school challenged me intellectually. I went to grad school at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I got 2 degrees, a master in business administration and a master in information science. And that's honestly top 5, one of the most difficult experiences of my life, but also one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life. Military experience taught me discipline and resilience. Again, top 5, one of the most difficult experiences of my life, but it also was one of the most impactful experiences of my life. Caregiving taught me perspective. That's a deeper topic that I don't feel the need to get into right now, but that taught me perspective. Career transitions taught me adaptability. Entrepreneurship taught me ownership. And through it all, honestly, I've learned that success becomes difficult to sustain when one pillar is neglected for too long. And honestly, success should be defined by what you define success as, because the world will tell you how you should define success, but you really have to define success in the best manner possible that works for you. Because comparison is the thief of all joy, and comparing yourself to people honestly does no good, because God created you fearfully, wonderfully made, and uniquely created. Uniquely created. Anyway, bringing this all together, when I step back and look at these frameworks, it's really how they all resemble each other and how they all work together. Cloud, product, AI, life, leadership. All of these are different domains, different languages, different goals, but the foundations matter, and builders who will thrive over the next decade won't simply understand one layer, but they'll be able to interconnect all these layers together. And as I wrap this up, our next segment of this episode is talking through just the differences of serverless versus traditional servers. Also, the next steps in the product leader's edge and what's coming after episode 8. So I'm excited to share that with you all. So we will jump into the next episode in a few moments.
Before we dive in, I want to quickly plug something I'm super excited about: the Inside Solo Star newsletter. If you've ever wanted an inside look at the behind the scenes of building product strategy, exploring the impact of AI and cloud, or just navigating tech leadership with intentionality, this is where it's all going down. Every edition is packed with real talk, no fluff, just actionable insights, frameworks that I'm testing in real time, and just lessons learned from the wins and the setbacks that I've experienced. Whether you're a founder, a product manager, or just curious about where tech is headed, there's something here for you. You can subscribe at insidesolostar.substack.com. Again, that's insidesolostar.substack.com. All right, now let's get to it.
Okay, friends, we are back. Okay, I'm going to make this segment pretty short. We are wrapping up the last part of the Climbing the Stack, Designing Modern Technology episode here at the Product Leaders Edge podcast. So I wanted to just share the differences between a traditional server and a serverless server, show a quick diagram, and then we'll talk about what's to come next in the Product Leaders Edge. First, these diagrams were recently made in my studies for as I mentioned, the AWS Amazon Web Services Solutions Architect exam. I was doing some labs and I built these architectures, but I built them off of a startup company that I helped to found. I co-founded back in 2021. It's called Selly. It was an AI gifting platform. This was before ChatGPT, my friends. We didn't vibe code anything. We built it from scratch. And the basic premise of what Selly was an AI gifting platform. You would land on the front page, the home page. You would input just characteristics about the individual or loved one that you were purchasing a gift for. After you did that, our little AI model would provide you with gift recommendations. We had an inventory of over 100 retailers in our inventory, so we provided really great recommendations for customers. But building that, it was built entirely on AWS through blood, sweat, and tears. And we scaled it from AWS. And Selly was really just a great experience for me because I think at that point in time, this was before the full AI shift that happened in 2022. But I was primarily focused on Selly through the product lens, through user experience, customer problems, feature prioritization, and product market fit, which honestly became very hard to prove after ChatGPT hit the world, because obviously, like, who's going to use your platform if we have this new cool and exciting platform from OpenAI that does the same thing? So that kind of killed our product market fit, to be honest with you. But I didn't realize that building that product would really force me to tackle the hard questions of infrastructure and architecture, because I was really learning AWS from the grassroots at that time. I was in transition in the tech industry. Like, me and my co-founders, we really just kind of learned scrappily. Again, no vibe coding existed at that point in time. We learned from the ground. Anyway, so let me quickly share just what a serverless server looks like. We did use a serverless architecture for Selly. And the reason for that was because Selly was a small platform. We didn't have a whole bunch of users in the beginning, so it made sense. Oh wait, what am I doing? It made sense to design the platform on a serverless platform, because serverless is really good when you have just periodic traffic throughout the day. Like if traffic comes in at like 12 p.m., boom, the system kicks into gear and it works. But if this were like a traditional server, the server would be working all day, every day, and you have to manually configure the server. We didn't have the engineering manpower for that. Neither did we need that amount of compute for a platform where we just had spikes throughout the day. So that's what drove the decision to just have it on a serverless platform. Okay, so for those, as I mentioned, for those unfamiliar, serverless does not mean that there is no servers. It means that the cloud provider, which in this case AWS, manages the entire infrastructure for you. And this architecture includes CloudFront. CloudFront is really helps to push static content forward. We have an API gateway. We have Lambda, which is a serverless platform. Then we have the database, which is DynamoDB. Then we have Amazon S3, which is the storage where we stored all of the data. So when you put in the inquiry for your loved one, like, hey, I want to buy my girlfriend a gift. Okay, she likes flowers, she likes whatever, it goes here. And what attracted me to serverless was just, like I said, it was simplicity. Because AWS managed this entire server, we didn't have to do it. And we didn't have to pay for the compute time that we didn't use, which was great. Also, as a builder, it felt incredibly powerful because instead of managing infrastructure, we had the bandwidth to focus on driving traffic to the website, which in that case, we use a lot of SEO. We use social media and word of mouth to drive traffic. And honestly, social media was a bit easier back then. before all of this AI stuff. I hate to use the word AI slop, but that's you get what I'm saying. Like social media was just a bit easier to navigate back in that time. And we didn't have the security, identity, and observability layer because that would have honestly been super expensive. I think we just had the baseline security that AWS provides. But if you think about security, identity, and observability, so identity and access management helps with who can access what on the platform, and then key management service that helps with like encryption. CloudWatch is really what tells you, like, gives you notifications if like your server is down, etc. CloudTrail tells you who did what on the platform, like if somebody changes or configures something. CloudTrail will tell you that, and then AWS Config, GuardDuty, and AWS Security Hub. And then we had like the AI quiz platform here. So I think from what I remember, we use AWS Personalize for that AI. Okay, so let me jump quickly to the traditional server. So I'll stop sharing, and I'm learning this in real time, guys. So this is actually a lot of what was on the exam, on the AWS Solutions Architecture exam that I took a few weeks ago. So I'm glad I'm able to share this with you too, so you can see that this is no joke. This is real work. Is it? Okay, here it is. Okay, so a traditional server, I would say when you think about legacy organizations, just enterprises, they use traditional servers because, like a bank, they have to run their servers all day, every day, 24/7. They need a traditional server. A small platform like Selly, serverless was the best thing because we didn't need that compute power all day running. And so this architecture shows just the compute, which is here, the EC2 compute. It's actually right here, excuse me. And we have the auto scaling groups, which is down here, which helps with scaling the compute storage. So you can either scale it out horizontally or you can make the server larger vertically. We also have databases, storage, networking, security groups, infrastructure management. And traditional servers do require more operational effort and more engineering expertise, but they also provide more control and flexibility. And for many workloads like banks, healthcare, highly high touch consumer platforms, they require a traditional server platform. So the lesson here isn't serverless versus server infrastructure. One can argue one is better than the other, and it's really dependent on the particular user case. Honestly, before this exam, I often thought that serverless was better, but after going through this exam and, quite frankly, not passing the first time and being surprised by the amount of traditional server questions, I realized that there's still a space for traditional servers. Like, they haven't gone away. They're very much needed. But so serverless optimizes for speed, simplicity, and reduce operational overhead, and traditional servers optimize for control, flexibility, and predictability. And as product leaders, we don't necessarily need to build these systems ourselves because we have engineers and cloud engineers to do this work for us, but we need to understand the implications of these decisions. So what's the ROI on what's the cost, generating a cost model for choosing a serverless server versus traditional server, and just really understanding that like these engineering decisions are now becoming product and business decisions as well, especially with AI platforms. So if we zoom out from this entire everything that we went over to today, my career progression really looks like this stack. So I started working within the user experience, then I got an understanding of product, then I started understanding the data layer, now I'm learning cloud, now I'm learning architecture, layering AI as well. And I did plan out this journey, but honestly, as I think of the stack of modern technology, this is honestly how you are able to differentiate yourself. And I'm wanting to be an entrepreneur in this space. I have aspirations to be an AWS partner, partner consulting firm with AWS. So I really have to learn all of these things because my career path requires it, right? But what's coming next is I'll be retaking the AWS Solutions Architecture exam. I'll be continuing to condition my body for the HYROX race that will be in 2027. I'm also recording season 2. I'm not going to go into season 2 because there's a lot to come with that. But the interlude episode that serves as a transition from this first part of the season after episode 8 to the next half of the season, we'll go over the goals that I have set for the Product Leaders Edge. And what's next is really the Builder series. Let me stop sharing screen. What's coming next? And before I say that, if you are on Apple Podcasts and you want to see just a screenshot of the traditional servers and the serverless servers, you can hop over to YouTube and see that on the video. Or I can also, I'll remember to link just the photos of the diagrams, in the show notes. So exam, fitness, HYROX, third. The next thing that's coming within season 1 is the Builder series. So the Builder series is the next step of season 1. And so far we've talked about product market fit, go-to-market strategies, the intersection of AI, science, etc. We've laid out what a product manager does with Kyle and Travell. We went over the core 4 of modern technologies today. And now we will see it in practice. So the Builder series will feature 7 founders across different industries, and they will talk about their challenges, struggles in building their businesses. In the next episode, the interlude episode, I'll go over more on who's joining for that. But I know we've gone over a little bit on time on this episode, so I want to wrap things here. But again, thank you all so much for tuning into the Product Leaders Edge podcast. Again, a special thank you to our global audience across the world in North America, Europe, Asia, and we are hoping to get listeners in South America. Also thanking our listeners in Africa and Australia, Antarctica. We want to be global, so please continue tuning into the Product Leaders Edge podcast. If you are on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, and share. If you are listening through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of the other podcast platforms that support the Product Leaders Edge podcast, please subscribe. If you would like a written version of the Product Leaders Edge podcast, you can subscribe to the Inside SoloStar newsletter on Substack. That's substack.com/inside SoloStar. Also, I do have a Medium page where I do a breakdown of the episodes as well. You can follow me at KJ Green at Medium, on the Medium platform. Or you can simply type in the Product Leaders Edge podcast on Google and type space Medium, and it'll pull up all of the Medium articles so you can get a written version of these episodes. But that's all for now, and I'll see you guys in the Builder series. Hope you have a great rest of your day, whatever day it is that you're listening to this podcast, and I will chat with you all soon.
Thank you for listening to the Product Leaders Edge podcast. If this episode gave you a new way to think about product leadership, share it with someone else who's building in the tech space today. You can follow my work on LinkedIn through my weekly series, Tech Tuesdays with KJ, and subscribe to the newsletter on Substack, which is SoloStar by KJG.substack.com. And I'll link all of that into the show notes for you all. But let's continue to build at the intersection of product, cloud, and AI. Until next time, keep building.